With your host, Adrian Younge.
Colonialism is a policy of countries seeking to extend or retain its authority over other people or territories, with the general aim of economic dominance. In the process of colonization, the colonizers, or the metropole, which is the mother country, tend to impose their own religion, economics, and other cultural practices upon the indigenous people of the new land. The foreign administrators rule the territory in pursuit of their own interests, seeking to benefit from the colonized regions, people, and resources. America fought against its own metropole, the British, and declared independence or freedom in 1976. Now, when Trump's peeps stormed the Capitol, they were chanting 76 as a euphemism for freedom. But this euphemism was directed at the freedom of who? White males in America. A time when white males called all of the shots. One of them being that blacks are eugenically inferior. And moreover, that the enslaved blacks were merely chattel or property. And after the Civil War, we were just America's problem. But what does 76 mean for the black woman? And how does this euphemism or false positive still exemplify the invisible shackles that continue to inhibit the posterity of the black woman? What is double oppression? And how does this impede the black woman's search for freedom? With these thoughts in mind, I'd like to bring on a guest, a black woman, a black mother, a human being, a Grammy Award-winning MC that rose to fame in a male-dominated field, a member of one of my favorite hip-hop trios of all time, Digable Planets, also Brookzil. An effortlessly charismatic person I wish all of you get the chance to meet sometime. Please give it up for my dear friend, Miss LadyBug Mecca. How are you?
Hey,
How you
what a
doing?
lovely introduction.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. How are you?
I'm well. How are
Yes,
you?
I'm well.
Good.
It's interesting that, we get to have these kind of conversations, and I love to have these kind of conversations with my intelligent, creative friends because we don't get these opportunities to talk about these kind of things that much, right?
In a public sphere,
Right.
for me personally,
Yes.
journalist to interviewee, not much.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
same here. Because see, you're not supposed to be smart enough to talk about these kind of subjects. That's the thing. I'm not supposed to be smart enough to talk about these kind of subjects.
Yeah,
But
we're not supposed to be aware enough to be able to talk
exactly.
about these subjects. Yeah.
Exactly. We're just feeble-minded artists that just make music, and that's
Just shut
our
up and
job.
dribble. Shut up and
Exactly. Shut
dribble.
up and dribble. So I want to get straight into this. Black women have faced a triple burden in America, dealing with racism, sexism, and just a lack of economic opportunities. Have you felt this? And if so, how have you been able to really maneuver?
Yeah, absolutely. All of what you mentioned are very intentional tools designed to uphold white supremacy. So, yes, I have experienced it on multiple fronts. That concept and ideology drives everything around us. We have an entire globe in this modern history under the thumb of this ideology. I can't help but to be floored by the kind of programming that it takes to uphold this man made construct of race and class for hundreds of years. And it's not going anywhere. They made that super clear, right?
Well, it's interesting because racism is something that is man-made, and I'll underline man-made. You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
um, it's something that America really pioneered. I mean, there's
Right. And
all
see, hold on. You don't get this type of society without very purposive action 24/7, right?
absolutely,
It's not by mistake
absolutely. It's not by
whatsoever.
mistake.
And
It's
it's not that we're so inadequate and that they're so incredibly great that they own like the best of everything in the country or that they go to the best schools, right?
It's just it's just nefarious concepts. It's just being evil,
Mhm.
because but there's always been classism, you
Mhm.
know, there's always been the I'm better than you because I'm a Catholic and you're a Christian or I'm a
Sure.
Protestant and all that stuff. But
Mhm.
the concept of I'm better than you because of my race was an avaricious decision. It was a decision made to protect a certain class of people,
Mhm.
and we are feeling all of that still today. Most people that don't really understand the concept of racism think, "Oh, well, why you tripping? Slavery was abolished like a long time ago.
Right.
Civil rights movement happened a long time ago," and they think that's
Right.
just it. But
Right.
it's so much more than that. And
Yeah.
if you don't live it, if you don't see it, you just don't get it.
Yeah.
But that's why we have these forums to be able to discuss,
Mhm.
and help people get a better understanding of why we are in the positions that we are in,
Yeah.
why we have certain insurmountable obstacles that ensnare us, that put
Mhm.
us in prisons, that don't put them in prisons for the same offense. There's so many
Right.
different things.
Right.
So
Yes.
like something that I actually really wanted to build with you. No, there's a myth that our culture perpetuates when we call someone a house Negro,
Mm.
which is a pejorative term referring to someone as a sellout or over empathizing black person for the benefit of some white authority.
Mhm.
The term implies that the house Negro had it better because they generally lived inside of the enslaver's house or just in generally close quarters, were fed better, had better clothes, ate better food. They just had it presumably better than the field Negroes. However, something that our culture rarely takes into question is what it actually meant to be a house Negro that was a woman, a
Mhm.
female that
Mm.
was by law the property of their, in quotations, master.
Mhm.
So, as a black woman that came up in a music industry heavily dominated by white males, did you ever feel like a house Negro? Did you ever feel like you lacked the degree of control you otherwise would have had you not been a person of color? Talk to
Yeah.
me.
Well, those kinds of things are all distinctions, separations, and boundaries designed to be a barrier to us building any kind of collective power, right?
Yes, yes,
I've never and still don't care about my oppressor's feelings or fragility. I'm not afraid to challenge the establishment. I was a very observant child, a very independent child. I appealed to my parents to let me separate myself from the church, and I asked a lot of questions. To me, we were praying to a God who does not care about us, is in the image of a slave master that was given to us by our oppressors. And to answer your second question, it's a part of our everyday accepted culture that Black women's rights as individuals be constantly under assault. I was searching for, for instance, I was searching for my missing royalties under several sources, and I was immediately met with the stereotype of being angry, unlikable. What are you talking about? You're crazy. They clearly felt like, how could this Afro Latina woman be intelligent enough to figure this out? It took me a few years to gather, all of the evidence, but I did, and I was able to restore my ownership.
well, it's interesting because if you speak in a way that is assertive, automatically it stimulates the, oh, she a bitch.
Right.
She a straight bitch. Now,
Definitely.
what's interesting is that when you look back and you study all the cases of women being raped by their enslavers, women being raped by their enslavers' homies, because if they get pregnant, that's more property for the enslaver. I mean, there's all there's all these documented incidences where there's serious post-traumatic stress. And anytime a Black woman is pissed off about something, the question is whether she's acting with class. And
Mm,
it's something that kind of stems from back then.
mhm.
But my thing is also, like, if you're dealing with all this stuff, how are you supposed to act? You know what I'm
For
saying?
sure.
Yeah, how are you supposed to act, you know? Um, and it's interesting that you talk about your upbringing. So your parents are both from Brazil, yeah?
Mhm, mhm.
Okay. So, you have this Brazilian blood. Can you
Yeah.
briefly talk to me about the racism Black people have dealt with and or deal with in places like Brazil? Is there any stories that your parents ever talked to you about or anything like that?
Yeah, I'll say this, like, in America, you know how there's the one drop rule. One drop
Yes.
of Black blood makes you Black.
Yes.
In Brazil, it's almost as if one drop of white ancestry makes you white.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
were embarrassed to be such a Black country, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So they went through a period of what's called whitening to try to
Mhm.
dilute their Black roots.
In the 40s, started
Yes.
bringing people in. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So
Yeah.
through policy,
Mhm.
Brazil basically received over like a little over 5 million immigrants from Europe and the Middle East to whiten Brazil. This was like conscious policy.
Mhm.
Okay.
Exactly. Yes.
So, like, just comparing the two between America and South America, like the juxtaposition to me just further magnifies like the diabolical nature of white supremacy. You
Yeah,
know?
it's really crazy, but the concept of white supremacy can also be really defined as white imperialism, which also is a synonym for manifest destiny. And that's why a lot of white supremacists use the Bible because they view themselves as the chosen people to take over the world, with expansion and everything. And just going back to Brazil, just to kind of further elaborate upon this beautiful country.
Mhm.
Brazil imported more Africans than anybody else in the world, first of all,
Yeah,
during for
second to
slavery.
Nigeria, the population of enslaved
Yes.
peoples
Okay.
were. Okay, just to give you
Secondly, Brazil was the last out of all the Western societies to abolish slavery in
an idea.
1860 in 1888. Okay. Um, Also, there's this multi-racial makeup of Brazil, and they use this to mask the racism. They
Mhm,
just say that their
mhm.
race is, quote, "Oh, I'm just Brazilian." And
Yeah,
that's the perspective.
yeah.
So, I have a lot of friends. I know you have a lot of friends and family out there. And it's interesting when you observe the type of educational sterilization that they go through and went through in order to have them have a little, more apathy towards the injustice against people in the favelas, people of darker hue. Um, you know, they deal with racism with denial, just like America does. But it's just, like the president Bolsonaro, he says, "Hey, we are all Brazilian. We're harmonious." It's a
Yeah.
monolithic perspective that really disguises this enigma.
Mhm.
But if you look into statistics, you'll see that 75% of police killings in the last couple years in Brazil were of Black people,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
they exterminate them. They're killing children, you know.
Listen, they will kill children who are sleeping, like homeless children who are sleeping on the stairs of like a building, like kill them in their sleep. It's really disgusting.
It's very disgusting and it's sad. And one of the saddest things to me is just seeing how many people that are teenagers and or adults that never identified with their Blackness because they didn't even know it was there.
Mhm.
It's not a lack of identification because They're embarrassed by it. It's just that they didn't really know it was there.
Sure.
You see?
Sure. It's like a rewriting of history. It happens like all over the world. Oppressors, colonizers will come in and rewrite history to misinform and miseducate peoples of darker hues.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And something else that's really interesting about the more you research Brazil, have you ever heard of the Confederados?
I don't think so. Okay. No, doesn't ring a bell.
So the Confederate. Okay, so let's just back up. I'm just wanting to back
guess?
up.
I think I
go for it. Go for it. Go guess for it. Guess.
I feel like it might be like off-duty police officers.
It sounds like that, right?
But no, sounds like that.
No. But okay, I'm gonna tell you this because
me.
So I have like I said, quite a few Brazilian intellectual friends, and they didn't even know about this, right? Okay. And they live in Brazil. So check this out. So let me back up and give a little context. So in 1863, we had the Emancipation Proclamation, and that's by Abraham Lincoln. Everybody, with our revisionist history here, we look at Abe as honest Abe, but he was super dishonest, and he didn't give a shit about black people at all. People don't know that. He didn't give a shit about black people, okay?
Yes.
So, what happened was that Abraham Lincoln wanted to unify America. He wanted the Union, which is the North, to unify with the South, which were the Confederates. So, when they didn't want to unify, obviously they went to war, and this is the Civil War. And Lincoln, as a military move, said, all right, y'all don't want to unify with us? I'm going to vitiate your economic power. I'm going to take away your ability to own people. So just some context. In 1850, the enslaved Americans were listed as inventory on ledgers, and alongside cattle and farm equipment, and they were worth about $1.3 billion, which is 1/5 of the nation's wealth at the time. So when the first shot of the Civil War was fired in 1861, the value of that human collateral exceeded $3 billion and was worth more than the nation's banks, railroads, mills, and factories combined. So Lincoln, right? He said, look, I'm going to free all of your enslaved as a military move. It wasn't this moral grandeur. It wasn't this, I'm such a good dude. Like I want to free all these poor black people. It was not that. It was a military move. So at this time in the 1860s, America had its bloodiest war to date. Now, what's interesting is at the time, blacks were the victim because everyone in the South blamed all of this death on the blacks. Everyone in the North blamed all of this death on the blacks. Mm-hmm. So it was chaos, but blacks even more so became the problem of America at this time. Mm-hmm. So when the Confederacy lost, okay, we're entering the Reconstruction period, the end of the 1800s, getting into the 1900s. And they got an invitation to go to a country with tax incentive, with extra land, free land, to build a new economy. That was Brazil. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
That was Brazil.
I'm gonna have to.
That was Brazil. Yeah. I'll send you some stuff on this. Right. Like this is never ever discussed. When I saw this, I was tripping when I started reading it. And I just went deeper and deeper. So check this out.
Bonkers.
Around 20,000 Confederados went to they went into Sao Paulo, okay, and established a place called Americana and another place called Santa Barbara do Oeste. I think that's how you pronounce it. Right after the Civil War. So what happened was they brought agriculture, cotton, and just started creating this new slaveocracy out there in Brazil because it was still legal at that time. So that was the option. See, so going back to this concept of
Okay.
manifest destiny,
Mm.
when the Civil War happened and the Confederates lost, a lot of them pushed westward because it was still the Wild West, and they could still and if you didn't tell the enslaved that they was free, they didn't know. That's what
Yeah.
Juneteenth. Juneteenth is when the military went out towards Texas and said, "Hey guys,
Mhm.
you guys have been freed for the last 2.5 years. What you gonna do?" You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Back
Yeah.
then, like you learned things from telegrams of people coming by and letting you know things. So
Yes.
what's crazy now, every single year in Brazil, there is a yearly celebration with the Confederados in these rural areas with Confederate flags. Okay, it's with Confederate
What?
flags. Yes. Now, what's crazy?
Wow.
What's crazy is that it's celebrated by all the descendants of these Confederates, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But the perplexing part about this is that the celebration is more of an American celebration
Okay.
because blacks celebrate with them as well. And they don't truly understand the full context of their diaspora. But yes, those are the Confederados, and they are still in Brazil. You see what I'm saying? So it's just a trip, and people do not
Oh
talk
my
about this.
gosh.
Yeah, people don't talk about this. You know
Oh
what I'm
my
saying? So like,
My
yeah,
mind is like
yo,
super
dude,
blown and
yo,
interested at the same
yo,
time.
I was blown. I was
Yo,
blown myself. But
crazy.
like, it's crazy that when I went to Brazil, my family's from South America as well, which is Guyana, right next door to Brazil.
Okay, yeah.
But when I went to Brazil, I have no idea why I felt so at home in that place. I love Brazil.
Mm.
And the more you talk to Brazilians, you get to see how deep rooted the prejudice is under the veneer of we're just Brazilian.
Yeah.
But then it's like, but it's okay to kill people if they're of darker skin, children. It's just sad
Yeah.
as hell, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
people need
It's like
to,
a split personality. Like you can speak to someone that's like, oh yeah. And then they'll, react a certain way if they see someone, of culture,
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. So,
Mhm.
so let me say this to you then. How has your art served as an expression of your Black consciousness?
Mhm.
Like, I remember watching you when first hearing about you. I mean, from In Living Color and all over Yo MTV Raps and all that stuff. And you guys really came along the scene in a way that nobody else really came on the scene,
Mhm.
but it was like really it was a real unapologetically
Mhm.
Black thing, but it was creative, it was intellectual, and it's one of those things where like you guys will never ever be forgotten.
Yeah.
So talk to me
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. My art has enabled me to bring light to and attack what I see as traditional white values, lies, in my opinion. I like to challenge and reject white supremacy's exclusivity and version of the truth. And because as we know, these lies are used as a means to control everything around us. So, and also I also seek to empower us through what we do in the group, seek to empower us through self-love
You
and
know what's
affirming each other. Mhm.
Yeah, it was interesting, right? When we talk about the concept of racism, first of all, it's not what it was.
Mhm.
Obviously there's still racism,
Mhm.
but the world is way better now than it was for people of color.
Mhm.
But there's still a long ways for us to go for equality. So when we talk about the notion of white supremacy or white imperialism,
Mhm.
it's about us debunking this false history that they gave us. And it's about us debunking all of these myths that subjugate us to being a lower class. It's interesting because there are white people, if you say to them, we're just like you guys, they'll respond, well, why are you guys all in prisons and why do you guys, take up this percentage or this proportion of the prison population and have, these menial jobs and all, but like they fail to see the obstacles that we go through. And it's interesting because the issue is whether these people are racist or uninformed. There are people that are just uninformed.
There are people that and
Yeah.
and that's intentional to keep
Yes.
certain folks
Yes.
uneducated so that
Yes.
they can control them and they're told the lie that first it was the UK is our enemy, or England is our enemy, and now it's black and brown folks are our enemy, immigrants are our enemy. This is very purposive as a means to control folks. Mm.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. And it's like I could have this conversation with you because we both have traveled the world and we've both traveled extensively in America. You do not understand America unless you've traveled through it, unless you've driven through it, unless you've performed in the middle of America and you see a
Yeah,
sea of rural
yeah,
Americans and you're like, "Oh, people actually do think this way." But
yeah,
then there's also the people that are rational that don't think like they do, but they're part of an ecosystem that ferments this kind of closed, archaic thinking against anything that
mhm,
is different from what they see every day. So,
right,
my thing is what I will say in defense is that there are many people, and not even just white people. There are many people that are uninformed that see the world in a certain way because their authority is Fox News. Their
yeah,
authority are these Republican leaders that tell them we are problems, you
right,
know? So
yeah,
like some people just don't think, most people are sheep and they don't think for themselves. And like,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, it
I
it,
mean,
it is.
the
Yeah.
whole idea of capitalism, is what an invisible shackle that I think about because it distracts, us particularly from a liberation mindset.
Yes.
It's capitalism is not a system that's designed to maintain a high quality of life for human beings.
Right.
You know what I
But
mean?
you know what? You know what's interesting? When you say the word capitalism and you say the word socialism, that word socialism stigmatizes so many people because they don't understand what the concept of socialism really is. They
Right.
understand what capitalism is. They don't understand what socialism is.
Mhm.
So it's interesting to see how people have been ingrained with this concept of capitalism, which is parallel to the doctrine of manifest destiny. And that is what was the underlying doctrine that made America kill all the indigenous Native Americans, you know,
Yes.
that made, white men treat us the way that they did, you know? So it's like when we are trying to speak our mind, I always say that the language of the oppressed is insurrection, you know?
Mm,
So like when we have this catharsis, when we have this release, people think that we're crazy. But we just keep on saying, like, yo, do you not realize that things ain't right? Y'all can't see it? Y'all don't see what's going, like, you don't, you know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah,
just insane that we still have to have these conversations. But
right.
at the same time,
Their
at this
reality is very different from ours.
absolutely
And they can't see it. They don't experience it. It's like two completely different worlds.
right. And what I will say to people like us, I always say, don't live life with a dead soul, right? Don't live life like, oh my God, I'm going through races. Oh my God, I'm going through this. Be aware of what's going on and educate people and make sure you're happy, especially during these times when we're seeing our, people that we know dying from a disease. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like you realize our mortality. We have a job to make sure that life is better for our children when they get older, for the future. Like, focus
Yeah.
on beautiful things,
Yeah, at the same time, but not saying to turn a blind eye, to what's happening. I always feel like, what we can control is in our immediate community. Vote people in office. Live your life democratically within this system. Right,
Yes,
vote people in office in your immediate community to ensure that, try to ensure as best as we can within our control, that our immediate community is livable.
absolutely, absolutely.
Mhm.
So I want to change topic.
Okay.
I want to talk about hip hop. I want to talk about the culture that we were raised in. I want to talk about hip hop, which is really the bricolage of all music, with the nucleus of it just being soul, right? So in hip hop, which is really yesterday's jazz because it's our freedom music, I want to know what your perspective is regarding the tone of rap music over the last 30 years. More specifically, do you feel that Black artists should restrict themselves to purely positive messages, or should Black artists be allowed to speak with unfettered discretion, irrespective of whether it's degrading, or derogatory towards women or whatever? Like, what are your thoughts on this?
You know, it can get very tricky, but I feel like artists should still have the freedom to express themselves freely, even if I personally may not like or agree with it, because it still reflects our society. It still reflects our reality. And that's kind of where I concluded.
Yeah, you know what? So my thing is with my law background, like we spend a lot of time studying in law school, the First Amendment and the
Mhm.
freedom of speech, right? And basically, in general, freedom of speech, yeah, the freedom to do whatever the hell you want. Um, Basically, as long as it's not an imminent threat, essentially, or obscene or whatever, right? Just speaking very generally, right? So, you know, I actually believe that people have the right to be ignorant. I feel that white supremacists have the right to have rallies and speak about that. Like, just I don't agree with it, but I do not feel that anybody has the right to incite immediate violence and harm
Right.
against
Sure.
people. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm. Hmm.
So when it comes to, like, do I mean, I have daughters, you know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? So, but do I like music that calls this girl a bitch or that? I do. You know what I'm saying? So what does that mean? What does that mean? Okay, so check this out. What does that mean? Well, there's an element of social commentary. And I'll give you a perfect example. I love The Godfather. I love Scorsese movies. Okay.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
know, one of the
Okay.
things I really love about those movies?
What?
This just makes no sense, right? I love, I love when they be talking about niggers. You know
Huh.
why?
Okay.
Because it's
Why?
an honest, pure
Yes.
optic into the culture of what's going on. I'm
Right.
looking through a clear lens at something that is just real.
Right.
Scorsese's not saying that he believes these people are niggers. He's saying
Right.
those characters are doing
Say
that,
those
right?
things.
Right. So,
Exactly.
right. So when I apply that to music, right?
Mhm.
If they're saying this is a bitch or whatever, blah blah,
Yeah.
like my thing is we're performing artists, and I look at it as though they're performing, and it's social commentary. Do I believe that this person's a bitch or not? Nah, that shit ain't cool. But like, do I respect their ability to put that on wax and do it? The answer is yes. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I look at this whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. You know?
No, listen, I get it. I
Yeah.
get it. It's reality, and from there, it can spark conversation. It can spark education
Right.
of our very children.
Right.
You know, and that's how I see it.
That's how I see it as well. So everybody out there know that you are free to do what you want to do. But you know, my thing is though, and that's another reason why I have this podcast. It's another reason why I want you on this podcast to give your perspective. You know, I mean, my thing is that as we get older, we realize that we actually have a duty to make the place better, right? It's interesting when you look at albums, right,
Mhm.
from different groups, whether it's Curtis Mayfield, Isaac Hayes, or Delphonis, whatever. As they get older, they have songs that are cheesy as hell about righteousness. And you listen to it, it's like, yo, what the hell? Talk about love. Talk about this. Like when I was younger, like, yo, what you make this whack ass song about? Talk about, you know, a few more kisses to go, or
Right.
walk on by, or Superfly. I want to hear this stuff. And then
As you get closer
as
to
you
your
get
end of
older,
life,
yeah, you start realizing like, I see.
you
And
start wanting to impart things
yes.
on. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
you
as you realize, yeah.
you
Mhm.
realize it. It's a wisdom that you have, and it's
Mhm.
like it's the OGs. You are OG now. You
Right.
seeing what the youngsters is
The OG
doing.
mentality, the
Yeah, it's
OG, the
OG.
younger
It's
generation
yeah.
needs to listen to us.
Exactly, exactly. So you know, we get it, and we get where they come from,
Mm,
but at the same time, it's great for us to all spread the positive messages because we know that when white kids are growing up, they're getting edifying messages of where they see what their parents have done or where their parents are at, you know,
mhm.
and they know that they are part of that lineage. But us being people of color, a lot of our parents may not have been there. A lot of our parents' friends and relatives may not have been there. We need more positive role models to stand up and do things. And as we get
Yeah,
older, we start realizing that we want to contribute, you know?
right.
So it's, you know, life's beautiful. And we now we got to make our revolutionary album, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, you know, for our generation, you know, you are a goddess revered in the likes of Badu and Lauryn Hill, and you know, you're a
Mhm.
queen. And
Thank
you
you.
know, I love you to death, and I want to
I love
thank
you
you.
too.
Yeah, I want to thank you for being part of this podcast, and I feel like we have many more discussions that we need to have on tape outside of us recording music, right?
Yes, absolutely, and the pleasure is all mine. Congratulations on
Thank you.
this wonderful podcast and platform. Hey, everybody, this is LadyBug Mecca, and you are tuned into Invisible Blackness.